Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 125th episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And Seahawks Saturdays are one of my favorite days of the week. It is as often as possible, where I get to just hang out with my buddy, Jeff Simmons, talk about all things Seahawks, all things NFL, wherever our hearts take us. Jeff, man, how are you doing on this fine Saturday?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Happy football's back. It's been a quiet summer of news for me. So it's been a rough baseball season for me. I don't know for you, but like the last couple days since camp started, we've been talking about, I've been kind of off Twitter, and now every second I'm on there, there's like new football news to take in. So it's been fun. It's crazy how just like quickly everything comes back.
It is, and thank God. I mean,
Yeah, dude.
yeah, it was bleak there for a while. I mean, like it was just getting it felt like forcing things to find things to talk about, and I don't personally like to do that. What's kind of gotten your attention this week? Actually, before I even get into this, we have a new YouTube member, Corey Coleman, who has been a great supporter of the show. I'm so happy to have Corey as a family member in the YouTube channel. Would love to have more people join. We have a growing group there. A lot of people at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Bunch of growth happening there as well. I have a feeling we're going to have thousands of folks before long. It's going to be a great community, and we're going to have a lot of fun together this season. So now is a great time to join. If nothing else, give the show a like and click subscribe. All right, back to you, Jeff. What kind of gotten your attention this week? It can be Seahawks, could be non-Seahawks. Like, what's on your mind?
Let me tie some of the things together. So yesterday, if anyone wasn't following, Tua and Jordan Love signed new deals, and both of them hit 55 million APY. I know maybe the real numbers haven't come out yet, but Jordan Love played 8 good games, and he's a young emerging star, but 8 good games. And Tua is a guy who's been really lifted up by Mike McDaniel and getting Tyreek Hill there. But listen, me and you have gone back and forth on Geno, and you've been telling me for a couple of years, a year and a bit now, I've been on the wrong side of this whole thing. But Geno at 25 million, with these guys making 30 million more than him, and now obviously the new numbers haven't hit the books yet, and will be in the last year of his deal still next year. I said at the time that was the best deal I think John Schneider's ever signed. And even if you don't love Geno, like if you've watched the Giants show and you see Daniel Jones at 40 million and now these guys at 55, to have that guy at 25 million, it just emphasizes how good that deal is. And again, I've viewed Geno differently than you have, and it sounds like all indications. I heard Jaron Reed yesterday, and I've read all your reports. It sounds like he's having an awesome camp. So seeing those deals come out, and there was a bit of sticker shock, even though like I should just get used to it at this point. It's sort of like where the NBA is now, where these contracts are just crazy. But man, Geno at 30 million less than Tua is an unbelievable contract, and the Seahawks are really in a fortunate spot there.
I'm glad you started there. I hadn't thought to start there, but I think it's a great place to start because here's kind of like if I was to try to articulate the way I see Geno versus the way I think other fans see Geno. If forget it was Geno Smith, cover the name. If it had been Russell Wilson that had stayed here and produced the seasons that Geno has produced, and like looked like he continued, like it was like ascending, like a lot of top 10 numbers in a lot of places, I think a lot of folks would be like, okay, can Russ play till he's 40? Can he, he's in decent shape. He's been a great quarterback for the Seahawks, won a lot of games, won big games, won in the clutch. Like there'd be no talk of like, I mean, I think people would still be saying, yeah, we got to draft someone to develop, but no one would be saying like, okay, after next year, after he's 34, we got to move on. No one would be saying that, like zero. It's really just because of Geno and his story and the time. Like, people also, I think, underestimate he took over as starting quarterback during a rebuild. Like, this team is super young, super new, and now he's quarterback during the first coaching change in many, many years. So I think he has not been in the most favorable situation and has done really well. And in my mind, I think he is like one of the best quarterbacks in football, and clearly, like, way surpasses the bar for me of, can you win a Super Bowl if you build a great team around him? He is easily in that category. And I think that the Dolphins, with their deal with Tua, are saying we think Tua is in that category. Tua and Geno are very close in a lot of, rankings and whatever. Jordan Love, Packers feel that way about him. I think that Geno Smith can easily play another 3 to 5 years. Easily play that long and probably at a very similar level or better to what he's been playing at. And I think it would be absolutely a wise move. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it'll be a wise move for John Schneider to do what he did with Julian Love, but do it with Geno Smith. Extend him before this season, because I have a feeling, Jeff, he's not going to be a bargain after this year.
Yeah, if he has another year, or based on, say he goes in Ryan Grubb's offense, and we saw what Tua did once he got with Mike McDaniel, his career prospects completely changed. He went from a guy that they were trying to replace, and the previous regime were trying to trade them, to a now $55 million player. And Geno has that potential. We need to see the consistency. We need to see him play better against the top teams. However, it sounds like from reading your reports that the Grubb offense and things are clicking very quickly. And if he has more answers and he has the ability to do a couple more things, and he can kind of hit the outlets, and they did all this without barely using the middle of the field in Shane Waldron's offense. So if they can really open up all levels of the field, yeah, it's tough to imagine kind of seeing where the quarterback market is. And there's still guys who have to be paid. The next guys up are Dak, and Brock Purdy will be paid after this year. So that number's going to keep going up. So I cannot imagine if Geno has a good year, his agents just sits there and be like, yeah, we'll just play out the final year of this deal. Like 25 million a year. I think his cap number goes up to like the high 30s next year.
It's like 35, 36, something
Yeah,
like that.
but relative to the 55, and we're going to see $60 million players. Yeah, there's no chance if Geno has a good year, they're just going to be like, yeah, we'll play the last year of this deal out, and then we'll see. No.
Well, and the other interesting part of this, Jeff, is if Sam Howell looked differently, I think the calculus would be a little different as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you thought you were going to be one of the worst teams in football and get a high draft pick in any of the coming years, I think the calculus might be a little different. Sam Howell, dude, it is the talk of the sidelines right now. At least people going to every practice is like, what is with this guy? Like, PJ Walker legitimately looks better.
Ooh, that's pretty rough, man.
Yeah, legit. And PJ Walker was no great shakes in Cleveland last year. But so we can talk a little bit more about those. But do you think, like, because you're way, like, I think you've got a more hesitant view on Geno, and that's totally fine. I think it's a legitimate view to have. Do you think it would be the one that Geno's side would take it, and two, that it would be smart for the Seahawks to do it, to try to extend Geno on like a $40 million a year APY now, which would still be well below the top, the top 10, top 12 quarterback market, but would be a big jump from where Geno is. How would you feel if something like that happened?
I feel a little uncomfortable. I'm in the state where I just
Mhm.
want to see him do it, and I'm willing to take the price bump if he can do it. But if he comes out and then kind of is the same thing that I see, I would kind of I'd be a little uncomfortable. For me, this is why the whole time I've said this is the biggest year of Geno Smith's career, because it can change the trajectory and he can get to that level. And if he shows that he can play well in Ryan Grubb's offense, then they should just go with him the next couple of years. There's no reason not to. I'm in the wait and see mode. that's kind of how I am. I would have been the same with Julian Love. I would have wanted to wait and see before he got that money. But again, if they're in the building, they're around him every day. I can't see what he's like, and hearing from, and not just from you, it's from every reporter who's been down there. It sounds like Howell. I feel like Howell's the kind of guy that's going to look better in preseason games than at
He will,
practice
I
with the
think.
twos. Because I remember when
Yeah.
Geno was around with the twos, like we didn't hear a lot about him. But either way, hearing Howell's struggling that bad, it doesn't sound like there's any sort of quarterback competition. Anyone who's been there, you had Mina and Danny Kelly on the show, and they both were pretty bullish on Geno as well. So it was pretty interesting hearing from those two who are as smart as anyone around this team. So I would be a little uncomfortable, but from a business standpoint, it's probably a pretty solid move.
Well, so let's play that out for a second. So I think that's most likely what would happen. By the way, I'm not expecting an extension, but let's let's just play that out. So what you'd say is you want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
What seeing it means is, all right, now he is playing top tier quarterback. Like he is doing it consistently enough. I mean, I will just remind everybody, Russ didn't do it consistently either. He was one of the most inconsistent guys, but save that for another day. So he passes the bar. That assumes that he's playing really well, that the offense is doing really well. You're not going to get him for 40 million at that point. So you are willing to risk having to pay Geno Smith 50, 55 million a year.
I think because of his age, he'll never get to that ceiling. And I think that's why I think there's a sweet spot.
What did Kirk Cousins get?
Yeah, with Cousins is 45.
45 million.
Yeah, so I think that's where the sweet spot is. I think it's still 10 million less than whatever else is getting.
Yeah.
So it's really a difference between 40 and 45. I'm willing to take that risk.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be the number. I don't think it'd be below 50. Mm-hmm. If he's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in football, and you got a good deal with him the first time, I think you'd be at least 50.
Yeah. It'll be interesting because with Cousins, there were teams competing against each other, and they only got to 45. With the Seahawks, I think they would still be the only ones in on Geno. And I think that gives them some bargaining power a little bit.
Yeah.
But because he's not a free agent, right? He'd still have 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
If he hit free agency, we'd have a different story.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, I mean, let's say it is the difference of $10 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
What can you get for your team for an extra $10 million? I mean, that is, we've seen free agency that can be 2 starting linebackers. I'm back off all linebackers. That can be an offensive lineman. That can be like, it's a huge, it is like people talk, I don't know, what's the difference between 40 and 50? It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So I agree with you. I think that's a fascinating storyline. Not one that I expected us to be talking about, frankly, 3 days into training camp.
No, I agree. Totally caught my eye yesterday.
Yeah. All right. We'll come back for some more Jeff tidbits in a bit. I want to welcome Chris Neslin Smokehawk. Smokehawk. I love it. Another new YouTube member. Awesome. Welcome to the family, Chris. Great to have you. Nice comment here from Noah Berman, one of our YouTube members. Brian, it was so cool to hear you asking truly valuable questions at the press conference yesterday. That was nice of you to say. Thank you for that. I absolutely butchered my first day. I didn't even sleep that night because I was so embarrassed. I asked really stupid questions of Mike McDonald, and he looked at me like, who the hell is this guy, and why is he asking me these dumb questions? Hopefully I've done a little bit better since then. But
you have. I thought Geno's press conference, you asked great questions.
Really?
Yeah, I caught up on a couple of them this morning. I was just playing on YouTube, and I watched Geno. Who else spoke yesterday? There's
Jaron Reed and
yeah.
Who's the third person? My gosh,
I don't know, but I heard Geno's press conference.
Geno, yeah.
I thought you asked good questions. You were really specific. I like the middle of the field question, or asking that there were more elements of the offense being used. He didn't give a great answer, but I thought it was a good question. And there's something else you asked that was really I think you've gone better.
The one that I didn't ask the right way because I didn't get the right answer. He didn't understand what I was asking is and I'm gonna find a way to follow up with him one way or another. But so much focus for fans, media, players is on physical attributes. It's athletic game, right? All that kind of stuff. If you really think about the quarterbacks that separate themselves, it's the ones that get really good with pre-snap reads,
Yeah.
get good with processing, with decisiveness in their progressions, getting willing to dump the ball off, take a profit instead of forcing a ball. That's like, you think of Tom Brady, you think of even Patrick Mahomes, you think of these guys and it's like, how do you defend them? Because they will take whatever you don't defend. And I see that as something that Gino's doing right now that I don't think he was always doing that well the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to ask him like that. He thought I was talking about like mental health and like mental.
I know. I heard it. I was like,
darn it, I didn't do it right. But yeah, I'm gonna come back because I really do want to know how he's approaching that part of his game.
And like, I think you said it really, really well there, like what you just said there, because people always wondered why I wasn't the biggest Russ guy. I always got criticism from a lot of Seahawks fans. I liked Russ. I never loved him. And it was kind of for exactly what you just said. I always saw like the great quarterbacks being elite at that. And maybe I put them in a box, but I always thought that was a big limitation of Russ's game. And one of the things I have admired about Gino is I think he plays the quarterback on a far more sustainable level. I'd like to see it more consistently, but that was always the thing I worried me about Russ's aging. And I think we have seen it now that the playmaking's gone away. What can he be? And I think when Philip Rivers played the LOB in like its peak, like he was one of the only quarterbacks that was able to kind of nickel and dime them all the way down the field. And there was very few players who I've seen be able to do that. And I've always admired and I loved how Matt Hasselbeck did that when he was in his peak. So that's something I've always looked for in quarterbacks. It's why Russ kind of never hit with me, even though he was a great player, playmaking, best playmaker I've maybe ever seen. But that's something that's really important to me from the quarterback position.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, Philip Rivers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. You go on like this when you're playing one of those quarterbacks, it's so frustrating. It's not like, oh my God, they've got this rocket arm. Some of that, like Brett Favre, Josh Allen, like, there's some of that too. Dan Marino. It's really the guys like the Joe Montana, it's the guys that, oh my God, would you stop completing every single pass, like anticipating every single blitz, like throwing it to the one open guy? And like, it's so frustrating. And like, you want a quarterback that has that mental acuity to be able to do that. So we'll see if I can get him to answer that question. Ask it the right way next time. But anyway, nice of you all to say. I'll keep working on it. What else? What else has caught your eye?
Well, I was very relieved to see that the both linebackers came off PUP this week. I was very worried about having to read practice reports about O'Connell and John Radigan. So I was very relieved to see that. I think it's been interesting. We haven't heard much about Witherspoon or about Byron Murphy. It sounds like Nwosu and Derek Hall. So I've been interested to see which defensive players, and I know until the pads come on, you don't always see like the defensive linemen. But I've been interesting to see like Derek Hall is a guy we really were frustrated with last year. It seems like just from all indications, he's had a good start to camp. And it's been odd. We haven't heard much about Witherspoon. I don't know if his style will come out once the games come on, but it's just like Witherspoon and Murphy are so much of what I'm watching this year because I think this defense just needs. But it was nice to hear like Chenna. I think Chenna's a guy that like we really overlooked his absence last year. So just to see the different names that come out, it's been interesting to see Derek Hall's name flash because I know you spoke to him yesterday, but man, it'd be nice if he can add some to the table this year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm as much as I'm obviously looking forward to it and hopeful. I'm more hopeful than I was 3 days ago about Derek Hall. I'm in the wait and see mode there. He's got the tool. Like he's a good enough athlete, a good enough worker that he should be a 5-sack guy, even as a rotational player in Mike Macdonald's system. Like, I think he like just the 2-man games he can do with his power, he should be able to get to the quarterback, a handful of times a year. Now, can he do more than that? Can he be like a factor? I don't know about that, but I feel pretty good that he should be capable of that bar. We'll see. He had 0 sacks last year. He was pretty much a non-factor. So he's got a long way to go, but I think it's promising. You asked about Witherspoon or mentioned Witherspoon. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, one, in my camp notes and where I focus, for the most part, I'm like paying attention to new things that are jumping out. It could be new, the way the plays are being called or run, or the way the defense is, or, maybe a new player or something that's new. And so Witherspoon looks like Devin Witherspoon. He's doing his stuff. He is not like, if he was having these outstanding practices where nobody could complete a ball to him, where he was, I would be saying that. And that's not really happening, but he's playing excellent defense. I think part of the reason also at corner, if you're doing your job, often you don't get targeted. So he hasn't had a lot of those. I mean, he's played well. I have no negative things there.
The other one, I guess we didn't get too much of a chance to talk about it because we had Stacy on the other night, but Connor Williams, that really jumped off the page for me. That came out of nowhere this week, and so you were down there. Like, I'm curious, is there any still buzz about that? Like, is there likelihood? Like, it's kind of gone away now. It's like, that's I'm very curious what's going on there.
It's kind of gone radio silent.
Yeah.
I haven't seen, it's not only at the VMAC that it's gone silent, but on Twitter, I don't know about you, I haven't seen anything.
No, that's why I asked. Yeah.
If they said the report was that they were negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
If they were negotiating and we haven't seen any reports of him going to make any other visits, I kind of assume that things are continuing on the negotiating table. Like, maybe is it a 1-year deal? Is it a multi-year deal? What are the injury, like, how much incentives are they going to put in there for playing time, for Pro Bowl? Like, they'll want to put incentives in there that not only give them some injury protection, right, but also, okay, maybe he plays, but he's not the same guy. So they'll want to have, like, okay, in order for you to reach this, you're going to have to be a Pro Bowler or voted blah, 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 like whatever. So they might be still talking about that, or this is somewhat fabricated, and who knows, but it seems like I don't know, Jeff, can you remember a situation where Adam Schefter reports past physical, negotiations are happening, the head coach acknowledges that there was a great visit, quote, great visit, and that he thinks he'd play center if he was here, and that there's nothing going on? Like, that seems weird.
No, and that's why it's perked up at me. Like, it's weird. I don't remember many times where you just see guys pass physical as like a Schefter tweet. Like, I can't remember. I know maybe it's because he's coming off the ACL, but it seemed like Schefter's wording was like initially like, okay, this is a call to the other NFL teams. They're negotiating with Seattle, but other teams are still involved. He's healthy. Are we negotiating? Is Schefter just negotiating for Drew Rosenhaus and trying to get a contract offer? Or is he actually moving? And then hearing from Macdonald, I was like, okay, this sounds like something might happen here. And then I just don't know. It's gone silent. So I'm very curious. I think the fact that they've already passed his physical was even odd. But like Olu, Lake, and Tomlinson, like how those guys been doing?
Yeah.
Can you tell, like, without pads?
It's hard to tell without pads. It really is. My gut feeling is Olu's not going to be good enough. Like, he's going to be what I thought he was last year, which is like a league average center.
Like an Evan Brown, but lower.
Yeah, like that's my gut. And I mean, there's guys like Jaren. I think Gino was complimentary of Olu yesterday. I'm sure like I don't see it quite yet.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not the end of the world if that's the case, but if you could substitute he's good enough with great, and it's a very, very different situation, for that. I mean, and then not only that, but you're talking about, okay, well, Connor Williams is one of the best run blockers in the league. If that helps your run game, and then, okay, what does your run game help in terms of the rest of your offense and your like, there's a pretty big chain of events if this ends up working out.
Yeah, I'm really hoping it happens. As much as I have been kind of hoping Olu takes over the position, Connor Williams seems like a pretty unique opportunity that might fall into their lap. And again, we've both been talking about it. You said the thing I'm looking for this year is I think they need to establish a run game. I think their offensive line cannot be one dimensional.
I agree. I agree. The other news relative to the offensive line, Abe Lucas, remains out. Mike McDonald seemed a little concerned, unhappy. Are people assuming that with McClendon Curtis moving to right tackle, that's a sign that they're not expecting Abe Lucas back anytime soon? And I don't know. I mean, I see him walking around. We're not really allowed to talk about too many specifics, but I'm still like I'm in the hopeful camp.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if all we're dealing with is time, I think we're gonna get there, and I'm still hopeful. So that's where I'm at. Maybe it's ignorant, like maybe it's naive is the right word, but I'm hopeful still.
Thank God they signed George Fant. Oh man, like when we did our free agents preview shows, we kind of circled that they needed another offensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Just assuming we didn't, I think we had figured at that time Lucas would be back by now, certainly. But even when we were going through the show, I remember like the back of my mind thinking like, this is something they need, but they're gonna forget it, and they're gonna try to be cute with it. And I didn't think they would do it, or I thought they'd throw a draft pick at her to say, hey, Stone Forsythe played pretty well last year, we're fine. And I think credit to Schneider and for proving me wrong, because we said it in our show, we thought signing another right tackle that could play was a huge priority that was going under the radar. Everyone was talking about guard, and so were we, and center. But George Fant, at the price point they got him, he was a starter player for the Houston Texans last year with C.J. Stroud. So you could throw him in, and if they need to ease Lucas in, man, they're fortunate to have Fant there because they didn't sign him and they were relying on Forsythe, and this was Forsythe versus McClendon Curtis. Ooh, oh boy, I would not feel very. It'd be a classic Seahawks camp where we're just we're putting our
That's the
hat.
thing. If let's say I don't think this is the worst case scenario, but let's say it's like one of the likelier bad case scenarios is
Yeah.
Abe Lucas starts out on PUP, misses the first 4 games. All
Mhm.
right, let's just take that. Not great, not happy about it. How much do you think the probability, like the win probabilities, change for the Seahawks with George Fant in there for the first 4 games versus if Abe Lucas was there?
Not that much different. I don't think like I think Lucas is going to ease his way back, and it's going to take time. I think Fant might be for the first 4 games either at the same level as Lucas or a little better because Lucas has got to work his way back. So I don't think it really impacts their chances at all, and I think that's a huge factor for them.
Yeah, I think it influenced it a little bit. I think that Abe Lucas is a meaningfully better run blocker than George Fant,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
but I mean, like you said, I mean, Houston made the playoffs with George Fant as a starting right tackle last year, and he was not a major problem for them. I don't know if Stone Forsythe or Jason Peters or Jake Curhan were their starting right tackle if that would have been the case. So
Ugh.
yeah, I do feel very comfortable with George Fant. I've liked what I've seen from McClendon Curtis. I got to say, I'm not like saying like, oh, this guy's the next great thing. I want to see 1v1s to really get that's when you can see how do these guys actually anchor. Like
Mhm.
it's not
Yeah.
just speed rushes, but like can they hold their position against strong bull rush? Watching Byron Murphy go against these guys, watching Jaron Reed, watching Leonard Williams, watching Chenna and Boye and Derek, like watching those guys go against, I will learn a lot more then, and I'll have a lot stronger takes on the state of the offensive line. For now, I think McClendon Curtis looks serviceable, at least, which is not something I would have
That's
been able
good.
to say
That's
before.
important.
And he's young and athletic and strong. Like there's things about him that are more appealing than like a Stone Forsythe or certainly a Jake Curhan or Jason Peters. There was a super chat I want to get to. That comes from one of our YouTube members, Isaac. Says Geno equals unicorn QB. He has so many years of mental development, so little wear and tear on his body, and shows consistent willingness to take team-friendly deals, allowing JS to continue to build the team. Jeff doesn't like that as much. I agree with you, Isaac. You know, I agree with you. I think that how many times did people want Russ or other quarterbacks to do the Tom Brady and take less than market value so that they could build the team? Geno maybe didn't have a lot of choice, but I think he had more choice. I think he didn't have to take a $25 million a year deal. I think he agreed to do that. And I do think that part of it was because he wanted to be here and wanted to show loyalty.
Yeah, I think the only thing I was shaking my head is he said like multiple team-friendly deals. I think that's a little favorable to the Seahawks.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. Isaac's listening to us on the Salish Sea in his kayak. I love it, dude.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful day to be out in the water. No doubt about that. It's a great day on there. All right. So you mentioned Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson being back out there. One of the things, I couldn't say it yesterday, but it got published in a story, I think by Bob Condata, so I'm going to say it now. Tyrese Knight was getting snaps with the number one linebacker crew yesterday.
Let's go.
And I think it was because, Jerome Baker was out yesterday. I think it was just a rest day. They're being smart and bringing him back. But it wasn't John Radigan. It wasn't O'Connell. It was Tyrese Knight next to Dodson. Not to say that Tyrese Knight's been doing amazing things and like everyone should get super hyped. But I think what that tells you, Jeff, is he's doing the studying, the preparation. He's assignment correct enough. They feel good enough about his development this early that they want to give him those snaps.
Yeah, I think that is meaningful. I think that is meaningful because in OTAs, it was Radigan and it was O'Connell who were taking the one snaps. And McDonald's been around the Harbaughs who are a little different than what we were used to with Pete Carroll in terms of like, I don't think Jim Harbaugh's the kind of guy who's going to throw a highly drafted player out there because he was highly drafted unless they're on their shit. And to see that Knight is capable of going with the number ones already, I do think that's a good sign that it seems like he's leapfrogged the other two guys. Not that that's a huge bar or anything, but yeah, I think you said it really well. I think the fact that he's able to go out there, and this is not an easy defense to learn, and there's a lot of complexity to it. And just hearing all the veterans talk about the differences in the defense and all the checks they're going to have to know, I think that is a meaningful sign. And I think that indicates he is next up for linebacker at this point, assuming that if one of those guys do get healthy, and Baker's had a number of injuries the last couple of years, I think that's a really good sign. And he's going to be one of the guys I'm very eager to watch when the preseason games are on, because not a lot of the starters are I doubt they're going to play Jerome Baker much in the preseason. He's a guy they're probably going to want to save for the season, but he's a guy I'm going to want to see. And I've been joking. I was joking the other night that my bid is now he might be good because everyone hated that draft pick. So I'm kind of cheering for him. So I'm very excited to hear that. I'm rooting for the guy.
Yeah. Even after he was drafted, Mike McDonald's first press conference, the way he talked about it indicated like, hey, this guy's a developmental project. We got to teach him to do things that he hasn't been doing.
Mhm.
And so in my head, even the most optimistic view was, okay, this guy might be a player that gets on the field in year 2, special teams guy year 1, emergency snaps if necessary. But if he's essentially the number 3 backer
Mhm.
right now behind Baker and Dodson, then um that could indicate that he's going to get snaps this year, you know? And it's hard to tell. Like, I'm still learning Mike McDonald's defense, so I can't really say, like, it might be as simple as John Radigan is the backup behind Dodson at Mike, and
Yeah.
Knight is the backup behind Baker at Will.
Uh,
But those 2 positions seem pretty interchangeable in Mike McDonald's defense. So I can't say for sure that it's meaningful or not, but still, it's good news. It is good news.
Yeah, and when I had the same reaction to you when I heard McDonald first talk about him. He didn't seem that enthused on the day 3 press conference, and that sort of hit the vibe that a lot of the fan base or any sicko that was watching day 3 with us kind of felt. There was a lot of low energy towards that 4th round. But then Brady Henderson published a story a month or so later, and I think I sent it to you guys, but it was about he hit on a couple things that proved to be true. He talked about how the Seahawks tried to make Jamal Adams a linebacker, which Jamal did confirm in a media availability this week. And he talked about how actually McDonald and his staff were the ones who really highlighted Knight during his pre-draft visit. And they kind of saw him a little higher than the personnel staff. And when they showed that press conference and I rewatched it, Schneider's like, I'm going to defer to Mike on this one. And apparently that was what kind of happened in the draft room. That really came from the coaching staff. And the coaching staff apparently really, really liked him. And that's why they kind of drafted him, frankly, 2 rounds early, where the media thought. So I was surprised when I read Brady write that, but Brady's really tied in. He hit the Jamal thing. He flat out admitted it the other day. So Knight might be a project that the coaches were really excited to get their hands on. And they passed on like Cedric Gray. They traded down some other linebackers. Whether it was one Washington drafted that a lot of people liked. I think McGee, his name was. I can't remember.
Mm.
But yeah, Brady wrote that the Seahawks internally had pretty high upside for Knight. And I was surprised seeing McDonald's initial reaction, which didn't really indicate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that it's definitely good news. We got another super chat here from Hawks fan Matt Man. Thank you for the super chat. Says, why is Marquise Blair back on the team? What are your thoughts here?
It sounds like Jonathan Sunderland got hurt or he wasn't playing well, but they moved on from Jonathan Sunderland. So if you want to make like a fun, completely conspiracy theory bit, and this is probably not the actual reason, but I'm into this conspiracy theory that Schneider's probably trying to prove that all his draft buffs were Pete's fault. D. Eskridge is still on the team. Marquise
Yeah.
Blair's back. He's trying
Yeah.
to. He tried to sign Jamal Adams at linebacker. Like
Yeah.
there's some science here. Like John's like, oh, Pete and his staff blew all my picks. But frankly, the real answer is probably Sunderland got hurt. They probably were looking at the safeties available. They figured take a flyer on this guy. They know him. They're not going to sign Justin Simmons to replace Jonathan Sunderland. It's probably an easy tie.
It doesn't need to be just one thing or one reason. I think, I think it would be foolish to not think, not necessarily I'm going to prove that Pete was wrong, but John Schneider had conviction enough to draft this guy in the 2nd round at one point.
Mm-hmm.
His guy down at the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, right, was huge on Marquise Blair. Seahawks safety. He's going to be the next great Seahawks safety. Like, so Nagy is Schneider's guy. So he's already had some conviction about this guy. And yeah, that factors in. And yeah, I think anybody would want to say, hey, I believe in what I saw and I want to see that work out. Maybe we see this guy differently and we'll give him more of a chance than another team would that's less invested. So, I mean, for me, Jeff, Marquise Blair was never a talent question. He was a hard hitter. He was able to play, like, he started being a pretty interesting nickel corner for them people forget that he had moved to nickel corner when he'd gotten injured, but he was going to be the starting nickel. The question had always been film study, preparation. There was rumors that he just didn't do the work, and maybe wasn't smart in that way, wasn't able to like even necessarily understand all of those things. These are all just hearsay. I don't know any of these things to be true. So one, I just as a man, I respect somebody dealing with the adversity that he's dealt with. It's hard to be, people might debate this, but I think it's hard to be a second round pick with some hype, come in, have some great moments, but then essentially get benched, not played for a while, change positions, have a devastating injury, bounce around the NFL, and then be out of the NFL for what, a year, 2 years?
Mm-hmm. It's been a while.
And come back. Like, there's a lot of ego swallowing that you have to do in a situation like that a lot of people just wouldn't be willing. They're like, I don't want to risk it again. I don't want to risk feeling like a failure again. And so I'm cheering for the dude for sure. I don't know how realistic it is, but I mean, let's see. Why not? I mean, I'm like, better than some random dude that, probably will bounce off the roster regardless.
Yeah, it's a worthy flyer to take for sure. They know him. They know what his limitations have been, and I think I've been kind of harsh on him in some of our podcasts. I've said some tough things about him before. Hopefully, he wasn't listening. But no, you're right. So many guys flame out in the camp. Like, camp goes from 90 to 53 every year, and I think you're absolutely right. It's very hard to be that first round bust and kind of, or he was a second rounder, but he was a high pick. He was a guy they thought would be a day one starter. They drafted him over DK Metcalf. So they thought really highly of him, and they thought he was like their long-term Cam Chancellor. They finally got the hitting safety back. Yeah, and he's flamed out from injuries. So yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be a really cool story. Like, Geno Smith is the best example of the guy who's really persevered, that second round bust. But yeah, there are a lot of numbers at safety. It's probably hard, but yeah, if he can make some plays in the preseason, he could be a practice squad player.
Yeah.
You can at least be around him all year. Maybe he's learned. It's a much more interesting than basically most of the safeties you would assign to this point.
Yeah. Hey man, we got another YouTube member, a new one, Axel MTG. Welcome to the crew. Great to have you. Thank you for joining. Everybody, if you haven't already figured out, you can join as well. Link is in the description of the video. We've also been having a bunch of people join Patreon during the show. I think the most recently, Andrew Ortega. So welcome to the show, Andrew, or welcome to Patreon, Andrew. Bo Lewis joined, Monica Johnson's joined, Travis Lockett, Katie Burns. There's a long list of folks that are joining. So I think we're all gearing up for a fun season, man. We're bringing the crew together, and a lot of good people coming together under the Hawk Blogger, Real Hawk Talk, Hawk Blogger Mornings umbrella. So come on over, patreon.com/hawkblogger, and the YouTube membership. Also, if you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. And you got to click the bell. I always say it, but I mean, right now you got to, because I have no idea when I'm going to go live most of the time right now. When press conferences finish, when I'm done with a camp report, when news breaks, the only way you'll know for sure is to click that bell. It'll notify you when I go live. So make sure you do that as well. Can we like tour the NFL a little bit?
Sure.
Get a little bit. We can come back to the Seahawks for sure, but a little bit of I'm a Schadenfreude person.
Me too.
And I don't have a real reason to dislike Shane Waldron. Like, I mean, Shane Waldron was fine, but I just like him going to Chicago and getting Caleb Williams and this whole thing. Like, everyone's just freaking out, and I secretly am like, let's see how Shane Waldron does. Have you been reading that like the Bears defense has been dominating the offense in practice?
I have. I
kind of like that.
Man, Shane Waldron, like, the Seahawks fan base feels huge, but like nationally, Shane Waldron went really under the radar of like, if he had the kind of tenure he had here in like a big media market, he would be like enemy number one. Like in Pittsburgh, they were booing this guy, Matt Canada, last year, like crazy. Like Waldron had some ups and downs, but Chicago with Kalen Williams and all those receivers, he's under a spotlight in I think the second biggest media market in the country, or third biggest media market. And I'm certainly going to be curious how he handles that kind of pressure spotlight. He did not have a big spotlight here. So, yeah, I've definitely caught my eye. I know you've had Robert Mays on your show, and it's funny to hear like Bears fans are like, oh, we got Shane Waldron now. And like, it's funny. A lot of people, like the analytically type Seahawks fans, liked Shane Waldron a lot more than me and you did. I thought what Waldron was very clear. Now you give him a rookie quarterback. He was working with Geno and Russell, who are pretty clear, established quarterbacks. We've never seen him develop a quarterback before. So this is a whole new level of creativity. And it's on a coach on the hot seat, Matt Eberflus, who's like surprised he kept his job. I figured they'd hire an offensive coach. So he's got, I think if you had to name all the coaches in the league with the toughest, like the most pressure on them this year, he'd be in the top 3 in the whole league. Like Mike McCarthy, he might be second, Shane Waldron. He's got Caleb Williams, and he's never seen this kind of. So, yeah, I've had the same reaction to you. I'm very curious how he does, because adjustments, mid-game planning, when things go wrong, how does he adjust? When you have a rookie quarterback and you've struggled with that with a veteran quarterback, and they're going against a really sound defensive coach every day, like, oh, yeah, that's definitely caught my eye, dude.
Yeah, it shocked me when because Brad Spielberger, who I had on, who was like, yeah, I mean, the perception is Shane Waldron fixed Geno Smith, and I'm like, not in Seattle. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody gives Shane Waldron credit for what Geno's done the last couple of years, but there's like a highlight that came out of Caleb Williams making this crazy, like full sprinting rollout throw, kind of against the grain of his body to a diving Keenan Allen. And I'm like, yeah, it's a gorgeous play. It also looked incredibly hard to reproduce. Like you're not gonna run your offense around that play.
That's the thing. Caleb kind of does that. He makes these plays that are unbelievable. But I think you talked about it with Brad. And I was watching him a lot last year, and down to down, we talked about with processing and repeatability and things like that. I didn't see a quarterback that like he's got like the Mahomes level, like how the hell did he just do that style plays? But I don't see like the every down, like the kind of the plays that Geno makes. I don't see that from Caleb very often. And now you're going against much better defense that move a lot faster. I've got some skeptics going on around there.
Yeah, I'm curious. I generally have a feeling they're going to do pretty well, but I think Josh Cashman and I are a little bit different pages with Caleb Williams. I have some questions about him long term in this league. From our new member, Axel MTG says, yeah, Dave Canales also said that Geno was basically already there even before he took over. I think that's my take. All right, I want to move on. More news. Rams. So the Rams, like we talk a lot about the 49ers for good reason, right? They're the kings of the division, the most talented team in football, odds-on favorite to win the whole thing, which not for me, but that's the literal truth. But the Rams really are the team that we're battling with for the next generation, because the 49ers logically are going to drop down over the next 3 years, 5 years. Like even with Brock Purdy ascending, a lot of these guys are decaying. Trent Williams being the primary, but George Kittle, blah, blah, blah. So the Rams are the young up and coming team, even though they have Matt Stafford, who's old. So they have I think about us as versus them. Arizona to some extent, but I think Arizona is a distance behind. Stafford, 2-3 years older than Geno, has had more injuries than Geno, may have a shorter shelf life than him. But now Darian Kendrick, one of their starting corners, out for the year with an ACL. Darius Williams, corner that they brought back to start, hurt his hamstring and was not seen, as said to be getting an MRI. I'm wondering with the Rams, like, are we too high on the Rams? Is there a chance that especially defensively, that they may not be the team they were last year.
I've been wondering that for a while. The thing that nobody talks about is Raheem Morris is gone, and Raheem Morris
Right.
is a really good defensive coordinator. They've got a guy who it was, I think, the linebacker coach, like Don Shula's grandkid or something. Chris Shula. I'm not
Mhm.
sure the exact relation to, but there is a Shula tie. Everyone loves nepotism, but I I think that's a big loss. Like Raheem Morris was a really capable coordinator, really good coach. And I joked about this on Twitter maybe a month or so ago, but they've drafted pretty well on the defensive line. It's almost overlooked the story that Aaron Donald's gone. Aaron Donald, like if you look at any stat or any of those charts, Aaron Donald, the way he draws double teams, the way he still generates pressure, I don't think that's been talked about enough because the Rams did have a great offseason. I'm not going to lie. I like their signings. I like their draft. But I do wonder those two, the coordinator leave and then Aaron Donald, is Kobe Turner going to be the same player? Is Byron Young going to be the same player? I have questions about the front seven in general. I think Aaron Donald is a story that almost gets too overlooked because the Rams have done such a good job. I will credit them. So the funny thing about the Seahawks and the Rams is perception is so funny. They both had 9 wins last year. And there was that game where like Gino got hurt and we joked about it Evan was joking about it, but say Myers hits the kick and the Seahawks have 10 wins and the Rams have 8. The Rams were looked at last year. They had this great year and the Seahawks were flops and like they were a game apart or they had the same record. I can't remember. So, and that was the year the Seahawks did not play well. They were awful defensively and the Rams were really trending upwards. So I don't think the gap is as far as it feels, especially now that if McDonald's as good as he thinks, as good as we think, I mean, because McVay was really at a much higher level than this coaching staff last year, which we would have given a pretty low grade to. And the talent is pretty similar. I don't think it's that considerably different. And they have some ascending players for sure. And they have drafted well. And I really like what they're doing with their offensive line. But yeah, I'm with you. I think there's a lot more questions on defense that because they did so well and they exceeded expectations and their offense emerged, I think people have overlooked a lot of questions with that team.
Yeah, I guess part of the way I look at it is the secondary was already a challenge for them last year. It was a weakness of their defense. They brought in veterans to play the outside. We don't know if Tre'Davious White has anything really left. Or people talk about him as the ghost of Tre'Davious White. Darius Williams, I think, is a good player. He's now injured. Hopefully, it's not serious, but he's an older player. Like that happens. And then you lose your younger corner for the year. And then you've got a front line that's kind of challenging. I have been hearing Braden Fisk has been giving Steve Avila problems. So we'll see if that's a Avila issue or if that's a Fisk being a good thing. But I'm fascinated by seeing what that team looks like this year. I also just tend to think of the 49ers. I am Maybe I'm just telling myself this, Jeff. It wouldn't be the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're oversold. I think they're overbought. I see telltale signs to me of an aging team that is. They're not like the window's not closed, but I think it's they're in clear descent, in my mind. And
So you see like
yeah,
do
go
you
ahead.
see like 2015 Seahawks? Like, is that where you're kind of at with them?
I wonder if it's even like 2015 might be a fair one.
2016
I think
Seahawks?
2016 is more where my head's at. Like their record might even be good. They might win 11 games. I just have real question. I think the defense, if they didn't have Brandon Staley coming on, I think he's a good defensive coach, and I think maybe he'll get more out of them than they got with the guy last year. But I don't know, like the amount of guys that are out injured that are older, so they're giving him rest days already. The contract situations, Trent Williams still holding, like the vibes for me are not good if you're a 49er fan.
That's why, compared to 2015, I feel like that Cam Chancellor holdout vibe and how it kind of
Yeah, good
impacted like
point.
the first half of the year, and they didn't really catch themselves until it was too late. Yeah, I feel it too. I think Pat Riley has something called the disease of me. It's a famous thing in sports, and it's after the team has success, every player wants things about themselves, and they lose sight of the team. It's human nature. It's natural. So I'm not. Pat Riley came up with this theory, and it's been true and true, especially in basketball. But we saw with the Seahawks and the Ayuk thing has ruffled feathers from players in the building. Trent Williams now at the end of his career, all of a sudden seeing the tackle market go up, and he's holding out. And they're just apparently they haven't been able to block without him in practice. So
Mm-mm.
exactly what we see. And that's the thing. If you study this team closely, they are an aging core, and they haven't supplemented well in the draft this year, especially. Like they took a really luxury pick with their first pick. Me and you were really worried about them drafting a tackle, and I know that was something that really worried you with this strong tackle draft. They took a fourth receiver who's now on PUP, and that's where I do compare it with the Seahawks, where they stopped supplementing around that same time. And what happens is, it happens a lot in football. Your team gets old quickly. And why I love the draft, you have to keep supplementing. And a quarterback can overlook that at times, like we saw with Russ. We might see with Purdy, but we never saw Russ, once the team got a little worse, be able to be at that same level. And I think San Francisco could be on that path. And their best player on offense is probably Trent Williams. He's near the end of his career. Christian McCaffrey is a running back. They decline around his age. Deebo Samuel, if they do sign Ayuk, Deebo Samuel is not going to be there long. George Kittle's 31. If you take some of those guys out of the building, or their efficiency drops, there's not a lot of emerging players on defense since the 2019. Like, they haven't drafted a lot of them. Hufanga is one of the only ones, and he got hurt. He's coming off an ACL, and hopefully Malik Mustafa is not that guy. But they haven't drafted a lot of emerging players, and they're kind of old. So really, it felt like last year was that peak of the window to hit. And they're kind of acting the disease of me thing typically hits a team that wins. So they not only didn't win, that which brings a whole other set of issues. And I saw Deebo Samuel say, and Bosa say, like, they've wondered like if they'll ever win now. Like that my thing is crossing through their mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was always kind of the last year of this window with this group. But yeah, there's some troubling signs, especially that they haven't been able to. Like, I think if you look at their team, like, they drafted a cornerback in the second round. I don't think he's supposed to projected to play very much. So they're not getting much from their draft class, and they're already an older team. I think they're playing with fire. I don't think they're going to be like they were last year, where it just seemed like they were kind of that 2013 Seahawks level team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I get. Let me clear my throat real quick. I got some super chats. Let's get to these. Detail oriented says, Brian, just my way of saying thank you and a bit of support for all you do. I can't express how much you're appreciated. You are my number one spot for all things Seahawks. That is incredibly nice of you to say. It means a lot to me. So thank you for supporting the show and supporting what we're doing here. Detail oriented. Wash Farm. Would you guys be in favor of the NFL switching to an 18-game regular season with 2 preseason games and 2 bye weeks per team? Jeff?
No, I wouldn't. I think even 17 games has pushed it a little bit. We've seen the quality of play drop a lot. I've talked about it in the last couple of years. Things last year felt off. It was just there was a lot of low quality quarterbacks and injuries. And I know the second bye would help, but I think we're already at a level where we're already pushing it with quality issues because of how many games there are. I think adding the 18th only makes it worse. And I think there's just not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And if there are injuries, I think another game just adds more likelihood the quality decreases. But the second bye would help. And I love the 18 from having more to watch. But no, I like the 16 games. I think they're getting a little greedy now.
Here's where I am. And this is, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but it is my take. I think 16 games was the right amount, and the 17, anything more is wrong. And part of the reason for that is, first of all, this idea of an extra bye week being meaningful is silly. The majority of injuries that occur in an NFL season are season ending, like they're like long-term serious injuries. A bye week's not going to change that significantly. But most importantly, Jeff, what I see happening is the additional games steal quality from the playoffs
Yeah.
because you, instead of having fresher teams entering that playoff, you're going to be having more of what determines the champion, like the NFL
That's a good point.
Lombardi winner, being who can survive the war of attrition. Like that's more going to be what it's about versus what's the best team. And I think that's a mistake. Like I really do. I understand it's a money grab. I understand it's going to happen, whatever I think or anyone else thinks. But I think for the quality of the sport, I think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Like they're making billions of dollars in TV contracts already. The NFL has been a booming business. Like, do they really need more? Like the draft is now getting it's easy to say that from my perspective, but these owners are the ones who make these decisions. Everyone blames Roger Goodell, but it's the owners. But I could not agree with you more. You said that a lot more succinctly than I did. I thought 16 was the perfect number. I don't think 17 with the 17 playoffs. I think every year in the first round of the playoffs, you get a lot of dud games, and you get a lot of teams who shouldn't be in the playoffs and just below quality games. And I'd rather see less games that are higher quality. I think that's what made the NFL model so good, and it's what makes it. I don't think the 18 does. I'm not in favor of it, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah. All right. We got a question here from Video Game Sports Super Chat. Byron Murphy drama, something to be worried about. So I figured this would come up today. I got to tell you, I pretty much just want to talk football. I don't want to get into the off the field stuff. If it becomes a bigger story, we'll cover it then. But what I'll just say is it's an unfortunate situation for a lot of reasons. I feel for Byron, for his fiance, for everyone going through it, and also that people make some choices that they wish they wouldn't throughout life, especially when you're a kid coming out of college. So, uh, it is what it is. I'm going to just leave it at that. But if it becomes something we have to talk about, then we will. But I much prefer just to talk about on the field stuff. So that's what we're going to focus on. Thank you for the super chat, though. All right. We're at an hour. There's always more to talk about. Anything else that you're curious about from camp? Anything else that's been on your mind before we start to close?
I did see Sean Payton with another smug, arrogant comment. It might have just been completely just the wording, but it kind of triggered me. Did it trigger you? Do you know what I'm talking about?
When he said he was going to pick the quarterback that could beat Seattle in week 1?
I don't know why that triggered me so
That's
much.
such an asshole. I can't stand that guy.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, I want to ask you this since you're on that. Who are you, if you were to say your most hated coaches in the NFL, who would be like your top 3?
Let me think about this for a second.
So like contenders for me, Sean Payton's in that list somewhere.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh is always on that list for me now.
I don't hate him anymore.
I know. Everybody's kind of turned on it.
He's kind of become a meme. Like,
I know.
I really respect these two guys, but I love cheering against Shanahan and McVay. The Schadenfreude thing, I have great, like Sean McVay really earned my respect last year. I thought it was the best. The year before, I thought it was the worst coaching job of his career. Last year, I thought he did an outstanding job. There's just something about him. I get a lot of pleasure in watching him screw up, like timeouts and fourth downs, and everyone talks about he's this whiz kid. And listen, he's proved a lot of my concerns about him. He's learned, he's made, but I love cheering against him. So he's probably in my list. Shanahan in the last year has really lost me. And I was always big, like Shanahan was better than McVay when McVay was getting the hype early in his career. The last year, there was the comments about DK Metcalf where they like basically they didn't put a bounty on him, but they were trying to get him. It just really rubbed me the wrong way. I thought it was a very bad look. I thought the way he handled his defensive coordinator with Steve Wilkes, I thought he was a real arrogant jerk. Um, I think the way he handles Grant Cohn has not made me like him. I know Grant really tries to trigger him, but I don't think he's handled it in the most professional manner. And I thought the fact they didn't know the overtime rules in the Super Bowl, I thought that was a horrible look. I think that was embarrassing. And I get pleasure. The fact that he blew another fourth quarter lead, I think brought me so much joy. I didn't think I realized how much I disliked Shanahan until that moment. But I'd say those two guys and Peyton are my top three right now. And it's funny because I was definitely cheering against Russ the last couple of years, so I was kind of on Payne's side last year. But just every time he talks, he's like, "Oh, you're making Russ likable," and I'm just like, "Stop it, please!" And it's like,
I wasn't in that mode. I guess I like the year before when Nathaniel Hackett was coaching, I was definitely cheering against Russ. Like I was more cheering against all the people that had been negative about Pete in favor of Russ, and like anyway, long story, but I think mine, you hit it with Shanahan. Shanahan used to be like the guy I had the most respect for that in the NFC West. I think he really took a big step back last year, especially that DK situation. Like I want him to fall on his face. I want him to be humbled. He has gotten very cocky. The other guy, Nick Sirianni.
That's a good pick. Oh,
that guy really got on my nerves last year when he tried to like talk smack to Pete last year. And like, dude, you lost to Drew Lock.
Yeah.
Just shut up, man.
He is a prick.
Yeah. Not a fan. And then Peyton. I think those are my three. right now.
Sirianni might be the best pick. That was the win of the draft. But it's funny. I used to despise Belichick, and like in the last couple of years, I started to like him. I don't know. Maybe this talked more and how to open up. And there was a story that came out this week that Shanahan and Belichick almost paired up, or at least he tried to, and Belichick instantly shot him down.
Yeah.
Going from Belichick to Nick Sorensen, that made me feel a lot better about the
Niners. Yeah. Nick Sorensen almost like, where does he fall on your dumb face? He's not like top of the list, but he's got to be on the scale there somewhere.
Yeah, he's pushing close to like poster boy of like Daniel Jones level, but like Daniel Jones like is my theory in a nutshell. And
yeah,
Sorensen's up there. I think the more FaceTime he gets this year, he could be.
You'll be able to calibrate your thing. All right, we got another super chat. Let's get to this. Ed Chan says, which players are you guys rooting for most this season? If you could only pick one, keep up the great work, chaps. Who are you rooting most for this season, Jeff?
JSN. I was so invested in that draft pick, and I was so frustrated by his use last year. Like, I don't know why that For You thing, but like fantasy football experts keep coming up on my page. And they're all talking about like JSN sucked last year. And I'm like, did you watch this guy? And I just want to see him do well. I think I might have bought his jersey last year. It was the first time the Seahawks actually drafted a player I wanted in this whole era. And every indication in camp is he's been really good. And if he hits, I'm going to really, really enjoy that one. I think it's just going to, I thought I didn't think he was just the best receiver. I just thought he was the perfect complement to DK and Tyler, which is why I was so bullish on them getting him. And I just want to see him explode. Oh, that sounds weird. Let's think of a better way to say that. I want to see him have a great season.
Yeah. For me, it's Geno.
Totally.
I want there to be a moment where his quality as a player is not up for debate, that it's irrepressible. And I think he's capable of it. I think Ryan Grubb can get that from him. And it'd just be a great redemption story. Like it's the kind of thing that I just get. That's part of what I love about sports. So it would be him, but I could easily give you a list. I mean, Byron Murphy's on that list. DK Metcalf's on that list. Evan Witherspoon. Like, you can kind of go on down the line. There's a lot of guys.
Yeah, Witherspoon and Murphy are huge on my list. I just thought they'd be kind of boring answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think JSN's a good one.
For my kind of go against the grain, there's certain people that are not Julian Love fans. I am one of the Julian Love fans. So there are people who study film a lot more than I do, who are not as high on Julian Love, I think, as we are. I would love to see him have an awesome year and just shut that crowd up.
We should have an all petty team, like the people that we have an extra bit of thing that we're wanting to win just to prove people wrong. So part of the pettiness is why I cheer for Geno too. I want people to be kind of shut up, but I think Julian Love's on that list. Jerome Baker would be on that list. Tyrell Dodson would be on that list.
Yeah, Rashad Jenkins.
Darrell Taylor would be on that list.
I don't know if I'm rooting for him, but
why not? Why not?
I hope he has a good year, but like he needs to win me back.
Yeah, I guess that means he's not like high on the list because we don't necessarily see it as like likely to happen.
Yeah, he lost me last year.
I get it. I get it. Oh, nice. We got a super sticker from Chris Smocock. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Got some people voting in for Wash Farm says Charles Cross. It's a great pick. Certainly would love to see Christian Haynes on that list. Abe Lucas on that list.
Yeah, Abe Lucas is a great answer.
So
I'm rooting for that guy so much.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, that's part of the fun. We got a lot to figure out there. All right, my friend, I think we're going to wrap there. Thanks to everybody. What a great show today. Seahawks Saturday. Always best when Jeff Simmons is around. Always fun. We didn't get a chance to catch up on Hard Knocks. I want to do that again. I've been enjoying that. But we'll do more soon. Coming up, some show notes. I will not be at practice today. It's my youngest son's birthday, so I'm going to be hanging out with the fam doing stuff. So there will not be an instant camp report today. I will not be getting interviews and all that good stuff. Sunday is a player's day off, so there'll be nothing from a camp report perspective. There will be Hawk Blogger mornings tomorrow. I will be on the road tomorrow as well, so we'll figure out timing of all this. I am hopeful. It was reported somewhere that Monday is the first padded practice. I don't know for sure, but I will be there and let you know. Excited to share that Alyssa Charlton from Fox will be joining us Wednesday evening for Real Hawk Talk. So first time talking to Alyssa, I've gotten a chance to meet her and get to know her a little bit more. She's asked some really great questions at the press conference, someone that stood out to me. So happy to spend a little more time talking to her. She is super tall though, and I am not. So I'm glad we're going to be doing this on video and not with me standing next to her because it would look like I'm an Oompa Loompa. But looking forward to that. I'm going to get more great guests, a lot more coming up. So please continue to support. Give the show a like, click subscribe, click the bell to get notified. And everybody, thank you for joining as YouTube members, Patreon members, all that. I will post the audio version of this ad-free for all Patreon members in just a few moments. Until the next time we see you, I am Brian Nemhauser. He is Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. This has been episode 125 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, all.